Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our reactions to the Formula 2 in Qatar, the penultimate weekend of Formula 2, and my god is it tight at the top. We'll get into all that and more. Before we do though, remember to like and subscribe, and a huge shout out to our members, Dakota, the Joyous James, Robin Myers and Cinnamon Strudel. Right, F2, firstly, Advent calendar videos are on the channel if you want to go watch that. Advent calendar day 1's up there right now. F1 Academy was on earlier today. If you want to catch up with all that, including crowning of our second ever F1 Academy champion, that's available for you there. But F2, let's start with the sprint yesterday. Ollie Bearman on pole. Isaac Hadjar, he's second in the championship. He was second on the grid here for the sprint. Pepe Marti is out of the race before it's even begun. He had a car issue. But as we get going, Ollie Bearman has a good start and is able to keep the lead. But Isaac Hadjar is all over the back of him. He started on the faster tyres. Of course, there's no pit stops in the sprint, but you have to choose which tyres you want. The majority of the grid seemingly going for the medium compounds, whereas Ollie Bearman went for the hard compound tyres. Hadjar does have a look into turn 1, but isn't able to take the lead on lap 2, but on the same lap, at turn 10 no less, he does take the lead. And up until that point, especially in the F1 sprint, the only real overtaking zones we saw were turn 1, 2 and 3. And if you want to get it past on 3, you've got to be at least alongside into turn 1. So an overtake at turn 10 at this point in the weekend was unheard of. So a great move from Hadjar to get up into that point. We get a huge engine failure from Ollie Gerfer. At one point, these massive flames spitting out the back of the car, and it looked like the fire extinguisher system within had put that out. Lots of smoke there, but thankfully he's okay. We get a very aggressive attack from Jack Crawford on Victor Martins for P9, but he can't make it past. This is a battle now that lasts the majority of this race. Martins on the softer tyres, Crawford was on the harder tyres. Crawford is trying over and over and over again to get past Victor Martins. We do get a brief virtual safety car for Ollie Gerfer's car, but that is sorted relatively quickly. Crawford again goes for a dive bomb as the virtual safety car ends, but goes for a huge lockup. It looks like he was kind of trying to catch Martin's napping as the virtual safety car ended to kind of get the jump on him, get past him from there, but had misjudged the timing of it and was going too fast, so had to slam on the brakes, really hurt his tyres then as well. Isaac Hadjar on lap 8 is leading the race, but he's complaining about his tyres, of course, on the mediums. And back to P3, we get another great defence from Victor Martins on Crawford. Around this point, lap 8 is where we see the mediums start to fall off. The switch properly happens here, where the hard tyres are the far superior tyres to the mediums, and the likes of Hadjar in the lead, Martins in P3, now really start to struggle compared to the rest of the guys on the track. Crawford goes wide whilst trying to attack Martins here. Crawford all over the place, and at this point, because Martins is going so slow, he has a huge DRS train that he is leading now from himself in P3 all the way down to 12th place. This is on lap 10. Crawford, though, locks up again. At this point, lap 15, Ollie Bearman has DRS now on Hadjar. He's caught up to the back of the race leader, but Hadjar just breaks the 1 second gap just before the DRS detection point. So Hadjar being able to keep the lead just momentarily, but Ollie Bearman back on the back of him not too late after. On lap 16, Crawford finally gets past Victor Martins for P3. Some amazing defensive driving from Victor Martins, keeping behind for that long. He did incredibly well, but it was inevitable that at one point Crawford was going to pass him, and he did on lap 16. And now the point starts where Martin just loses place after place after place. We see this when they have this tyre deficit and these tyres hit the wall, especially when you're driving like Martins was so defensively, eventually the tyre just gives up and you don't have the pace. So he loses one place, then he loses another, and eventually he's gone from 3rd to 7th place. On lap 21, though, Ollie Bearman gains a place and retakes the lead from Isaac Hadjar. Hadjar's on the radio saying that he was quite disappointed in himself, would have defended a little bit harder, but realistically his tyres weren't as gone as Martin's were, but they would have been if he had pushed it too hard. So I don't blame Hadjar for losing the position at that point. But now, everything just goes mental, because Miney and Antonelli collide, Hadjar is magically down to 4th, and the safety car's out. We get a replay here of Isaac Hadjar. He had a big spin towards the end of this race, and it cost himself a few positions down to 4th place. But yeah, also at the same time, Miney and Antonelli collide, and they're both out of the race as well. So safety car is out. The race ends behind the safety car. Ollie Bearman takes his 3rd race win of the year. You know, when you look at it on paper, you say Ollie Bearman's had a bad year in F2 because he is quite considerably way down in the championship to where you would expect him to be, especially at the start of the year when I was saying that he was going to go for the title. But, you know, to have 3 race wins in this year is still very good, because I think Hadjar's only got 4, and I think Bortoleto's might have less than Bearman has. Of course, they've been more consistent throughout the year in terms of getting good points everywhere else. But I think Ollie Bearman, when he's good, he's very good. So 3rd race win of the year for Ollie Bearman. I'm just double checking now. So Gabriel Bortoleto has had 2 race wins. So Bearman's had more than him. Isaac Hadjar has had 4. So only 1 more. So, you know, Bearman, when he's on it, he's on it. So he has the 2nd most race wins of the year in F2 this year, but he also has got quite a few times where he hasn't scored points or he's been withdrawn from races. So consistency, not Ollie Bearman's thing this year, but nonetheless an okay year for him as it stands. Crawford brings it home in 2nd, Vershaw in 3rd, Isaac Hadjar in 4th place in the end, Aron 5th, Bortoleto 6th, Miata 7th, Maloney 8th, Dirksen in 9th, and then Marty in... did I put Marty there? That must be Martin, sorry. Martin's in 10th. Marty didn't even start the race. Yeah, with Hadjar beating himself up about the incident with Bearman, which I thought was a bit harsh, but that spin, man, that cost him. And as we see the championship standings after the race has happened today, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, you know, it's so close going into that last Abu Dhabi weekend. And who knows if he would have been able to keep Crawford and Vershaw behind him on the track without that spin. But hypothetically, if he had, he's thrown away, 13 points on the track here because of that one spin. So, yeah, not great from Hadjar. Yes, he beat Bortoleto on the road, got more points than him, but realistically should have had a hell of a lot more out of that sprint race. Let's go to the feature now, and Paul Aron is on pole position. Gabriel Bortoleto alongside him. 2nd place in the championship, Isaac Hadjar is starting this race in 9th. Just 3.5 points separate him and Bortoleto. We get a delayed start because of barrier repairs. Now, these are the same barrier repairs that saw the 2nd F1 Academy race be cancelled. So I was a bit worried at this point, like, oh my god, we're going to have 2 races cancelled here because of this one barrier repair. But eventually they do get it going, and into turn 1, Gabriel Bortoleto is able to take the lead from Paul Aron, although he does not run away from it. Aron is able to keep on the back of Bortoleto at the start of this race. Now, what's really quite interesting at the start here as well, there's a little bit of an incident between the 2 Prema drivers of Bearman and Antonelli. Looks like Bearman had maybe a bit of oversteer coming out of one corner, nearly collects his teammate, but they keep on going from there, both of them having good starts, gaining about 3 places. But the interesting point here is that they're on alternative strategies. Bearman on the hard, Antonelli on the mediums, but they're there together, fighting through the grid. Bearman passes Miney for P7, few corners later, Antonelli passes Miney, he's up to P8. So the two of them cutting their way through the grid on alternative strategies. A great little thing to see at the start of this race. Now, yesterday in the sprint, the medium tyres lasted around about 8 laps before they fully fell off. But That was at night in Qatar. This is in the day. So people are struggling a hell of a lot more in those medium tyres. Bogdanovic is asking to box on lap 6 as his mediums are completely dead. The first pit stops come on lap 6. It's Crawford, Maloney and Mansell. A lap later, the likes of Aron, Bogdanovic, Martins, Rashaw, Antonelli, they all pit. Then we cut to Antonelli again, and he's off the track in the gravel. He's out on lap 8. This brings out the virtual safety car. Now, the interesting thing about the virtual safety car in F2 is there's this rule that I don't understand and I don't like it. But if there is a virtual safety car, you're not allowed to pit. Or if you do pit, it does not count as your one mandatory pit stop. Now, if it's a full course safety car, you're allowed to pit as freely as you want. But for some reason, there's the rule around the virtual. I don't like it, I don't understand it, but that's the rule. Now, Bortoleto is leading the race at this point on the medium tyres, and he has waited a lap more than everyone else to try and get some speed out of the tyres, I guess. At the end, maybe his were feeling a bit more comfortable. But as he's going into the pits, that's when the virtual safety car comes out because Antonelli is off. Now, if you are entering the pits and the virtual safety car comes out, sometimes they can allow you to get away with it because, you know, there was no way of you knowing. But with Bortoleto here, he wouldn't have got away with it. He had to pull out of it, but pulls out a little bit too late, passes the bollard on pit entry, then cuts back across. So either way for Bortoleto here, he was going to get a penalty. Either he was going to, well, not a penalty, but if he had pit, he would have to have pit again because it wouldn't have counted. And if he pulled out across, he would have got that penalty. So the best choice for him was to pull across and get that penalty so he didn't have to pit again. But from here, Bortoleto does get that penalty, a 5-second penalty for crossing the pit entry. Now you may be asking, well, wait a minute, Carlos Sainz did that last week and got away with it. And that is because every track is different and the layouts are different. So with the Las Vegas track, the part that there is the white line on the track, and then there's a bollard, and then you're in the pits. If Bortoleto had crossed the white line before the bollard, he would have been fine, is what they're saying. But because he did it after the bollard, that's the penalty. Although I do remember, like in Austria this year, I think Yuki Tsunoda got the same penalty twice because he crossed the white line, and there was no bollards. But, you know, consistency is not something FIA stewards do, mostly because they get fired every weekend. So that's a conversation for another time. Anyway, back to Antonelli. He's at the side of the track here in the gravel. We get a replay. Antonelli had just pit, as we just mentioned then. He's going down the pit lane, and Richard Vershaw has an unsafe release, hits right into the side of him. The steering's broken on Antonelli's car. Nothing he can do. He's just in the gravel. Vershaw will get a penalty for that later on. We then move to a full course safety car, and as I said before, under full course safety cars, you're allowed to pit. Stupid rule, whatever. So Bortoleto pits, as does Bortoleto and Hadjar. Ollie Bearman now the leading car as he is on the alternative strategy. Richard Vershaw has a puncture after the whole thing with Antonelli. That's when the penalty comes in for Bortoleto. Safety car ends on lap 13, and it's not a great start for Ollie Bearman. We have two safety cars here, this race. We'll have the other safety car very briefly in a bit. Bearman, two of the worst safety car restarts I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's quite surprising because I've seen him do it quite well before, but here, very, very bad. So, bad start for Bearman. Dirksen all over the back of him. Fight for the lead into turn 1. Bearman is able to keep the position. Meanwhile, Bortoleto tries to go around the outside of Marty. Marty properly forcing him out wide. He hits the 100-metre board and comes back on. Doesn't lose any places, thankfully. That's on lap 13. Meanwhile, behind, Villa Gomez spins round, and Paul Aron is all over the back of Bortoleto now as the two leading people on the soft tyre strategy. And this is when the safety car comes back out for the Villa Gomez spin. He's out of the race. This is when Vershaw gets a 10-second penalty for the unsafe release. Safety car ends now on lap 17, and there is madness here. So, Bearman is the leader of the safety car pack yet again. but he properly slows down. It must have been in the back of his head that the first safety car restart did not go well. So he's going, right, I have to do something differently this time. So he properly slows them all down, backs up the pack, and he waits and he waits and he waits. But because he's waiting so long, his tyres are going cold. And as he comes round the last corner to head to the start-finish straight, he goes wide. He wasn't even going that fast. He goes wide, massively leaves the door open there, and Dirksen goes, thank you very much, I'll take that. And Dirksen just goes off into the lead. And then we have behind Dirksen, who was it? It was Kushmaini. Behind Dirksen, he's still in third place. Bearman's in second, and Dirksen is now all over the back of Bearman as well. And Dirksen goes, okay, we're going into turn 1. I'll take P2 from you, Ollie Bearman. Thank you very much. And he goes for it. Bearman's able to defend that one, but Bearman has lost the lead. But then Dirksen gets the radio message. Yes, Ollie Bearman went wide, but he didn't go off the track. And because we hadn't crossed the start-finish line yet, the safety car hadn't officially ended. So Dirksen had done an illegal overtake on Bearman to take the lead. So Dirksen has to give the position back to Bearman. So Dirksen goes, okie dokie then, I'll give the possession back to Bearman. He slows down, pulls over, through goes Bearman, through goes Miney, through goes Browning. Dirksen goes from second to first to fourth in a matter of half a lap here. Bearman, so lucky, because he messed it up so badly. He nearly went from first to third in the matter of 2 corners off an awful safety car restart. But just because he hadn't hit the line yet, he was re-gifted the first place in this race. Very, very lucky from Ollie Bearman at this point in the race. And I'm the biggest Bearman fan in the world, but that was incredibly lucky for him. Anyway, further back down, we have Bortoleto and Hadjar. They are trying to get through these guys who are on these alternative strategies. So Bortoleto gets past Marty for P5. Then Hadjar gets past Marty. There's then 2 massive spins for Maloney and Esterson. Esterson was tapped by Victor Martins. Maloney is spun by himself. That was lap 18. Martins has to retire the car from there. Marty also had a big spin. He was off in the gravel at some point. This is when the race changes from a lapped race to a timed race, which wasn't a massive surprise. We were delayed at the start and we've had 2 safety cars. So 15 minutes left to go in this race. We get a few more moves here. Miney passes Dirksen up into P2. Bortoleto gets past Browning for P4. And now we have Miney in front of Bortoleto. And we have the Invicta teammates of Miney and Bortoleto. But what we must remember here is 2 things. Firstly, team orders within F2 don't really exist. You can ask them, but they're merely a suggestion. It's not like in Formula 1, where it's kind of like team orders are you're supposed to do them. In F2 and F3, it is merely a suggestion. If you don't do it, it's not that bad. So, but also what we got to remember here is Miney and Bortoleto don't exactly get on. We've seen it so many times this year where these guys have been fighting. They always end up on the same bit of track at some point during a race weekend, and every single time it is elbows out to the max. So Miney is in front of Bortoleto here. Bortoleto going for the World Championship. Miney's on the alternative strategy, and Bortoleto is going, please tell him to let me past. And we see Miney's been told, swap the cars, swap the cars. Miney is not interested in swapping the cars. If anything, he's acting quite defensively. Bortoleto is losing his mind on the radio, saying, let me past, I've got a 5-second penalty, I'm trying to win the race, I'm trying to win the title. But no, Miney is not interested. Invicta called Miney into the pits. It would have been fascinating to see if they'd let him out. What would have happened? I imagine he would not have let him pass, and Bortoleto would have had to do it quite aggressively. But Miney's called into the pits. He's not a factor anymore for Bortoleto, and Bortoleto is saying, thank you very much, let's keep on going. Meanwhile, Paul Aron is able to get past Browning for P4, then Hadjar gets past Browning for P5, then it gets even worse for Browning, because not only is he passed by Dino Beganovic, who's having a fantastic debut weekend in F2, but Ollie Gerfer as well does an overtake not just on Browning, but on Beganovic as well. A beautiful double overtake from Ollie Gerfer. Browning finally pits after being overtaken about 4 times in a lap. Bortoleto now on the back of Dirksen for P2. Dirksen's yet to pit. Bortoleto, incredibly aggressive late move, beautiful, into turn 1 to get P2 here. It's just Bearman in the lead now from Bortoleto, and Bearman's on the radio like, lads, what are we doing? When are we going to pit? Are we waiting for a safety car? They're like, oh, we don't know anymore, Ollie. There's been 2 safety cars. You screwed them both up. We haven't got the gap to do anything. If we have a safety car now, that'd be nice, but we're just going to keep on going and hope for the best. To be fair to Ollie Bearman, he did very well in this race. Everything went against him, and he didn't help himself on the safety car restarts. But he consistently built gaps all the time, and everyone else on the alternative strategy was really struggling, and his lap times seemed to be relatively consistent throughout the entire race. So I think Bearman deserves some credit for this race, but also his restarts were very bad, and I think he walked away from this race with no points as well. So highs and lows for Ollie Bearman. It didn't work out, but maybe in a different universe it did. Anyway, 3 minutes to go now, and Bearman and Dirksen pit from first and third. So Bortoleto now leads, but has the 5-second penalty for crossing the pit entry. He is 1.5 seconds to Paul Aron with 3 minutes to go. So relatively, the win of this race for Bortoleto, that's gone, because Aron is being very consistent. But the big thing is Isaac Hadjar, the challenger for Bortoleto in the title. There is 3.8 seconds between Hadjar and Bortoleto with 3 minutes to go, and we have to try and get that gap to 5 seconds so Hadjar does not gain any more points on Bortoleto. Then another interesting thing comes along, because all of a sudden Hadjar is defending from Ollie Gerfer. Ollie Gerfer on the back of Isaac Hadjar from there. So Hadjar can't spend too much time defending, because if he does, he's going to lose time to Bortoleto. But also, you can't let Gerfer get past you, because that's just throwing points out the window. So Hadjar in an awful position here. And as we cross the line, Bortoleto will cross the line in first, but gets demoted because Paul Aron finally wins a Formula 2 race. The man who was fired from the Mercedes Academy this time last year came into F2 this year, led the championship for a lot of the early stages, had a few bad races. This weekend has been hired as the Alpine reserve driver. He has finally done it. He's gone on the top step of a Formula 2 podium. Congratulations to him. But who will be second? Is it Hadjar? Is it Bortoleto? Isaac Hadjar is P2 by 0.4 seconds. Just 0.4 of a second separates Hadjar and Bortoleto in this race. Fantastic stuff to the end here. And what that means is Bortoleto is still in the lead of the championship, but just by half a point. Half a point separates Isaac Hadjar and Gabriel Bortoleto as we go into Abu Dhabi, the final race weekend of the season, to determine the F2 champion. This has been an incredible year of Formula 2. We said from the start that this was going to be a fantastic year for Formula 2, but no one expected it to be these two guys coming down to it at the end. I do not know which way it's going to go next weekend. I can't wait to talk about it with you this time next weekend. It should be fantastic. Half a point it is. So, Bortoleto comes home in third place. As I said, 0.4 of a second behind Isaac Hadjar. For me, he still gets the star of F2 for this weekend because he was tremendously entertaining. A fantastic drive, despite everything. Everything has seemed to go wrong for him this weekend, but he still got it. He still got some decent points. He still did a fantastic drive. In fourth place is Ollie Gerfer, his first F2 points. I think this is his third or fourth F2 race weekend. Some great points for him. In fifth place, Dino Beganovic, a fantastic debut F2 weekend for him as well. Big fan of him. Look forward to see what he does, hopefully in a full-time seat next year. Christian Mansell is sixth. Seventh is Cordeal. Bennett in 8th. Maloney in 9th. And Miata in 10th. A fantastic weekend of Formula 2. I'm going to miss this more. I'm going to miss Formula 1 where it all comes to an end. But it must end, and we must find out who our championship Formula 2 champion is going to be. We will know this time next weekend after Abu Dhabi. I will see you there, I hope, because this is going to be an incredibly fun one. Half a point separates Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortoleto. Who will be Formula 2 champion? We'll find out next week. I'll see you then. Until next time, have a good one. Goodbye.